Ah, the Roman Empire. If you somehow don't feel invigorated to praise Caesar and conquer Carthage after hearing Faria Faragi's Roman music, then I have nothing for you. Go and listen to it all. It's literally my entire shower playlist. But for the average man who thinks about Rome at least twice a day, and for me who has Rome on my mind permanently, we all love to LARP as Roman. I mean, look at my avatar. But worry not, we're not the only ones. Because many nations throughout history have often wanted to claim that they are the real inheritors of the Roman Empire. But how true is this? Well, let's look at the competitors. First, the fan favorite, every American monarchist's favorite empire, the Byzantines! The forefather of modern Europe, the empire Voltaire had something personally against, the Carolingian and Holy Roman Empires. The slayers of Byzantium, the sick man of Europe, the Ottomans. The bear of the East, the largest empire in continental Europe, the Russian Empire. The soft underbelly of the Axis, the founders of Fascismo, Italy. The conquerors of America, the empire which claims to own half the world, the Spanish. The empire that said, screw the Pope, I'll coronate myself. The nation that lost a war in 3 weeks, the French. And then there are the Bulgarians, Serbians, Romanians, and Portuguese. So, of all of these competitors, how do we evaluate their claims to be the Roman Empire anew? Well, there are 3 ways. 1. A historical continuity. This can be proven when a country continues unimpeded from one year to another, or changes to a new state from a previous government or name. Or, when a population remains continuous between different states. 2. A continuous language. The passing down of one language from one people group or state to another. Yes, even with changes, because no language stays unchanged. 3. A shared culture. The continuation of a culture from one period of time to another, through one group of people. These 3 pillars serve to determine whether or not one state or people group descends from another. If a country or people can prove the continuity through one of these methods, then they have a claim to lineage. With that established, let's see how our competitors are looking. With the first method, which countries have historical continuity? Well, only one empire can claim a direct and unquestionable lineage from the classical Roman Empire. That being Byzantium. The Byzantine Empire is without question the same state as the Roman Empire. The Byzantines, as many already know, never actually called themselves Byzantines. That was an exonym from Western Europe, who wanted the Holy Roman Empire to have more legitimacy. Instead, the Byzantines called themselves Romans, because that's what they were. The Carolingian Empire claims to have continuity to Rome because the founders were foederati of the Roman Empire, that is, barbarians that were subordinate to the Roman Emperor. But that's a lot weaker continuity. Of course, much of the population would still be Roman, including the former province of Gaul, but it would also include parts of Germania. Not quite Rome. The papal acclamation wouldn't exactly be a continuity of the method by which Roman emperors were acclaimed either. The Russians claimed some continuity from the Byzantines thanks to marrying into Byzantine families. But by this logic, Austria has a better Rome than anyone, so nothing really for Russia. The Italian state doesn't particularly have a connection to the state of Rome either, as Rome was conquered and replaced by the Regnum Italicum. But Italians have an undeniable continuity as people, as the Italians are without a doubt descendants of the Romans. This same argument also applies to the French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romanians. Special mention to Romania as well, as Francesco de Avalle notes in 1532 that they continued calling themselves Romans hundreds of years after the empire fell, and even to this day refer to themselves as such. Then there is the Spanish, who have an interesting case. Of course, population-wise, we get continuity from the Romans of Hispania, but also Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand of Spain were granted the title of Emperors of the Romans by the brother of the last Byzantine emperor. Does this make Spain the legal successor to the Byzantines and therefore the Roman Empire? I don't know. I'll let you decide that yourself. Then there are the Ottomans.
Well, I think Mike from Breaking Bad says it best.
Listen, Walter.
Just because you shot Jesse James, don't make it Jesse James. The Ottomans conquering Byzantium does not give them any continuity of state. It's different from the Mongols in China or the Turks in Persia, because the Ottomans didn't become rulers of the Byzantines. They were Ottoman. They did not become the Romans like the Mongols became Chinese. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Also, marrying into Byzantine families doesn't do anything either. Then yeah, the Bulgarians and Serbians. No, nothing here. Maybe some population overlap, but that's stretching it. And only for their empire forms, not modern day. Next, there's linguistics. So let's see who's out. The Russians, Ottomans, Serbians, and Bulgarians are automatically not applicable. But now we have the parallel situations of the Holy Roman Empire and the Byzantine Empire. The Holy Roman Empire mainly spoke Germanic amongst the populations, but they did speak Latin as the language of administration and the government. One of the two widely spoken forms of Latin in the modern day, ecclesiastical Latin, was created by the Holy Roman Empire to standardize spoken Latin throughout the empire, which, judging from how there are still differences between different ecclesiastical Latins, I don't know how well that worked. But either way, a case can be made for this one, although I'll leave it to you to determine if this counts, as the common languages weren't mainly Latin, although of course, in the Gallic parts of the early empire, Latin was also widely spoken. Meanwhile, the Byzantines started off with Latin being widely spoken. However, over time the language switched to become more Greek. So, does this disqualify Byzantium from this category? No! Greek was indeed a language of the Roman Empire. This is often a source of confusion to people when they ask how the Romans failed to Latinize the Greeks despite controlling them for so many years. But this is because the Greeks were considered civilized. As such, Greek was one of the official languages of the Romans. It was supported by the rulers and administration, and many emperors and dictators often knew Greek as well as Latin. I've mentioned the Heir line in previous videos, but it shows which of the languages were more prominent in the Balkans, north being Latin and south being Greek. Long story short, the language being Greek doesn't disqualify the Byzantines, and in fact, they get a point, because this part of the empire spoke Greek even during the classical era. So, Byzantium starts strong with 2 points. Then we come to Italy, Spain, Portugal, France, and Romania, who all speak a dialect of Latin. So yeah, points for all of Latin Europe. Indeed, all the Romance languages can be classified as Latin dialects, as they are simply different ways Latin is spoken across separate regions, like Chilean Spanish versus Castilian Spanish. Keep tallying your scoreboards for who has the most legitimate here.
Mare, 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 mare.
Then finally there is culture. Keep in mind here that many aspects of Roman culture have continued onto the modern day in many states and cultures that do not claim lineage to Rome. So the goal is to see how Rome itself directly kept its culture going over the ages. Back to Byzantium, who once again wins another point. The Byzantines often told stories and legends of their ancestors and called upon their names to inspire the troops. Heroes like Scipio, Constantine, Brutus, and more, calling parallels back to Romulus, Caesar, and the rest. Folklore in Byzantium very often calls back to the age of the classical empire of Rome. Then the HRE is back, and they do actually get a point here. Now, this certainly depends on the age, as sometimes the HRE was more Roman and sometimes less. But culturally, the emperor fashioned himself defender of Christianity, and being crowned emperor by the Pope makes a lot more sense as a cultural practice they claim to take from the Romans. Not directly, as no Roman emperor was acclaimed this way, but in the way of being the universal middle kingdom of Europe, if you will, the same way Rome was. Then an argument of historical lineage. Then there are the times when the empire was led by actual blood relatives of the Byzantine emperors who, get this, actually made the empire more Roman, moving the imperial capital to Rome, reinstating old Roman offices like prefects and consuls, and hosting public games, just like the emperors of old. Emperor Otto III even re-established the Roman Senate, signing documents as Emperor and Consul of the Romans. Man was LARPing harder than any of us could ever hope to. If all of that doesn't give the HRE a point, then the use of Roman law, the building of classical Roman-style palaces and architecture, the recreation of Roman aqueducts, the use of Augustus as the imperial title, the use of Latin in administration, and the relationship with the church should all combine to be enough to give the HRE a valid claim to a Roman culture. Then we have the Ottomans, who indeed also referred to their leader, the Sultan, as the Kaiser of Rome. But being called Emperor of the Romans by itself is not actually enough to be Roman, as seen by the Russians calling their emperor Tsar, and the Germans calling theirs Kaiser. And as no major folklore, stories, or cultural or political practices point to Roman ancestry, Quite the opposite, actually, as the Ottomans fashioned themselves conquerors of Rome, only really wanting the title of Roman Empire for glory and not putting in any of the effort. So, no point for them. Next up is Russia, who, and this is gonna shock a lot of people, I think, if you really squint, could have enough claim to make this work. Okay, hear me out. The culture they inherited is indeed not direct, as they took it from the Byzantines. However, the Russians adopted much of Byzantine culture to tie themselves into Byzantium, and saw themselves as a brother nation to the Byzantines. The Orthodox Church being the most obvious point, as the Russian argument almost entirely hinges on being the inheritor to the heart of the Orthodox Church, which was the soul of Byzantium. The Russians also did some things, like using Neo-Byzantine style architecture, having a Roman Tsaris in Catherine the Great, and most based of all, Tsar Peter putting in his will that it should be read to all Tsars of Russia a statement upon their coronation. Go and conquer Constantinople. Which I think should count for something. Now, does all of this give Russia enough credence to have some kind of cultural tie to Rome? I know what I said earlier, but actually I don't think so. I think it could give them one to Byzantium, maybe. But these are cultural aspects linked to Byzantium uniquely, and not Rome per se. As the links are to uniquely Byzantine aspects, and not the aspects of the classical Roman Empire. But you be the judge of that. Then let's slide in Italy, Spain, France, Portugal, and Romania, who, yes, all get an automatic point. All of them directly call back to Roman ancestry and legends, cultural practices, and folklore. Extra points to Italy and Romania. Italy for mentioning Scipio in their anthem, and Romania for mentioning Trajan and announcing that they will show the world that Roman blood still flows through their veins in their anthem. Also, I've met Italians named Augustus, Romanians named Trajan, and so on and so forth. Then finally, Bulgaria and Serbia, who I guess have the Russian argument about orthodoxy too? Romanian has that one as well though, huh? But like, nothing else really. Mostly stories of fighting against the Byzantines, so no point. So, let's see those scores. Byzantium comes in with a solid 3 points, with a +1 for continuity of state. All pillars are fulfilled, with both the state and population having continuity, speaking the same language since the Classical Age, and having cultural ties to Rome. The Carolingian and Holy Roman Empire get 2 points, a full point for culture, and a half point for language and continuity. Although, you can change the score a bit depending on how much you buy the HRE's arguments. The Ottoman Empire gets a big, fat 0. There is no good reason the Ottomans should be considered the Roman Empire. They are their own kick-ass giant empire, and should be proud of that. The Russian Empire gets maybe half a point, depending on your opinion of their cultural argument. Then let's get the Serbian and Bulgarian empires out of the way. No points. That one was pure LARP, guys. Then there is Italy, France, Spain, Portugal, and Romania, who all have 3 points, although their continuity is purely population-wise and not state-wise. Then language and culture also counts. You can shove Greece in here as well if you feel like it. So there you have the rankings. The Byzantines are in number 1, with a state in the modern day with the most linkage to Rome being Italy, and the other Latin states. Except wait! What's this? 2 last-minute competitors? Vatican City and San Marino. Vatican City, and specifically the Pope and Holy See, follow the link of popes ever since the days of Rome. The continuity of the Vatican's Holy See is unbroken from the time of the Roman Empire, with the Roman Catholic Church remaining an important political and cultural force maintained since the days of Rome. The official languages of Vatican City are Latin and Italian, which are both dialects of Latin, with Latin itself being used as the language of the liturgy. And the Catholic Church maintains the same culture and stories in the Bible used since the times of the Romans. Then there is San Marino, which was formed as essentially a Roman separatist state by a Roman monk during the time of the Diocletianic persecutions, arguably making its lineage longer than the Vatican, as it was founded before Christianity became integral to the Roman identity. And this state has existed since then, with a brief period it was occupied by the Papal States. San Marino speaks Italian as its official language, again, a Latin dialect. And the story of San Marino's founding is literally the story of a Roman making a church on a hill that managed to outlive the empire it was built from. So, actually, the modern-day Roman Empire can be seen in these 2 small Italian microstates. Behold, the Roman Empire! Yo yo yo! if somehow after listening to all that Faria music, you haven't been convinced to go and see it all, and like all of it right now, and subscribe to his channel immediately, I don't know, I'm telling you to do it now. Literally, links are in the description. Go do that. Also, maybe while you're doing that, subscribe here as well. I don't know, I'm just saying. The next video on the Eastern Slavic history is hopefully for next week. But man, it's been a lot of research, and it'll be a little bit more before I'm ready to make the script, so... Whew. I also have some of my IB stuff coming up now, so... Anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and have a great week! Ciao ciao!